A lot of entrepreneurs think the scariest number in business is zero. Zero sales, zero customers, zero cash in the bank. But sometimes the scarier number is much bigger. It's the big revenue number that makes the business look healthy while cash flow is quietly breaking underneath. It's the impressive sales number that hides shrinking margins. It's the tax bill nobody planned for. It's the profit that looked good on paper, but somehow never made it into the bank account. That's where a lot of business owners get blindsided. They're working harder, selling more, hiring people, serving customers, maybe even growing. But behind the scenes, the numbers are telling a very different story. And if you don't understand that story, eventually the business will explain it to you the hard way. Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur. My guest today, Ryan Otto, helps entrepreneurs avoid that moment. He helps small business owners move from financial confusion to clarity, from once-a-year tax panic to year-round strategy, and from guessing with their numbers to actually understanding what their business is trying to tell them. Ryan is a certified tax advisor. In 2022, after the passing of the founder, Ryan took over Accent Financial Services. Ryan has more than 2 decades of experience in entrepreneurship and Fortune 500 finance. He is a Main Street Certified Tax Advisor, or MSCTA, and is widely recognized as the taxsmith in the Main Street Certified Tax Advisor community. His mission is to empower clients with clarity, control, and confidence in their financial lives. And we'll start empowering you with clarity when I return in just a moment. Stick around. Ryan, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you as my guest today.
Mike, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Let's get one thing out of the way. CTA, Certified Tax Advisor, I get that. Main Street CTA, I've never heard of that before. Which doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means I haven't heard about it before. What is the difference between a CTA and an MS, Main Street Certified Tax Advisor?
Yeah, so the Main Street Certified Tax Advisor program was actually developed by a gentleman named Mark Kohler. And he has a law firm, a tax practice, all kinds of stuff. And he's one of the big ones that you will find out there in this space. And so his program specifically gives off an MS CTA, a Main Street business. That's what their thing is all about. Is helping the small businesses of America.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I figured it must be important because it's listed on your bio, MSCTA, and I had to look that up. I'm like, okay, there's at least two extra letters there that I'm not familiar with. So thanks for straightening that out. Your path to finance started very early, from what I understand, doing bookkeeping for your father's business when you were still a kid. First of all, that's really impressive. What do you remember about that experience? And did it feel normal at the time that, or did you realize that, hey, I'm just a kid. None of my other friends are doing this stuff or learning this stuff. How did that go down?
Yeah, it's funny because it didn't actually dawn on me until sometime recently that's what that situation was kind of all about. And, when I really, really look back on it, I think what I was just thinking is I got a computer at home and nobody else has one of these things. It was a Mac Plus. I don't know if you remember way back when, but it was a box like this
was
big.
Was that
and it
the
had
transparent, the translucent box, or was the white one with the tiny
it was
screen?
before that. Yeah,
Before
it was before
that. Okay.
Yeah. And we had one of those. And we had Microsoft Excel, and back then, Excel was made strictly for Apple, not even for Microsoft. Yeah, so it was crazy, and I kind of look back on it, and I'm like, it was weird that I was doing that stuff, but I think that was the beginnings of how I got into Excel, which is it's such a huge part of my brain.
Yeah,
And so it was kind of
absolutely
cool.
Well, I do think that kids would greatly benefit if we taught them two things at a very young age, like an obscenely young age. One would be accounting, and the other would be coding. writing
Yeah.
code software, because both teach you to think analytically. The
Yep.
thing about numbers is they don't lie. We live in a world where we all have different interpretations of the same set of facts, but two plus two is always four, right? You can check it. It's a law, like the law of gravity, right? It exists, and it's you can't refute it. It's irrefutable. And coding is the exact same way. Coding teaches you logic, because life is nothing but a whole bunch of if, then, else statements, right?
Yep.
So, and and I think that whether kids grow up to be coders or accountants really doesn't matter. I think teaching the basics of that
Yeah.
really programs the brain to think differently about everything else that falls after that. So,
Yeah.
good for your dad. I mean, it was probably self-serving for your dad because he got some cheap labor, right?
Yeah.
But it was also really wise because it led to your career, but it also led to a certain way of thinking and a certain knowledge that most people don't get until way later in life. I started a
Yeah.
business 34 years ago. I didn't know anything about accounting. And it showed. It showed up every day, right? That was the last thing not only was that the last thing I learned, it was the last thing I even wanted to learn. I didn't
Yeah.
appreciate what I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I just knew I didn't know enough. You've described your own journey as having some unexpected pivots. I know that your company, Accent Financial Services, you took over the company when the previous owner passed away. That certainly can fall into the category of a pivot. Was becoming president of Accent Financial Services always part of the plan? Did the owner pass away and you were ready to go, or was that like,
No.
hello?
Honestly, it was never part of the plan. I mean, if I look back on it, like 20 years ago, Ryan had no idea that he would ever be in a tax and accounting business. I was in hotels, and I was very securely in hotels. I started in hotels 26 years ago now. And I was going to school for biochemistry, of all things, and I didn't know anything about hotels. I didn't know anything about accounting. I got a job at one from a friend of a friend, and it turned into just this series of events of getting into hospitality accounting. And I did that for such a long time that having my own business was really not a thought for a long time. And it only kind of became a thought when my wife and I were sitting down one time, which I would highly recommend to everybody is sit down and talk about what you want your future plans to be with your spouse. But we were talking about what we wanted to do with life, what we wanted to have, and how we were going to get there. And we decided that we were going to buy a business. So I started looking for businesses to buy. And interestingly enough, if you guys are ever looking to do that, there's a huge number of businesses for sale all the time and all over the place. But so we started looking at it and we said, okay, we need to find something with the right cash flow. It needs to be mostly hands off. She has a career. I have a career. We want this to be, adding into our lives, not having to take us out of things.
So a little bit more
And
passive income.
yeah, it was meant to be that with, kind of the minority of our time was going to go towards managing this thing because we would hire a manager, would hire the right people. And of course, that's not how it all played out, but that's fine. The first business we actually looked at buying was a nail salon of all things, and the numbers on it were amazing. You get the P&Ls, you get all the statements, you get the history of everything, and man, it looked just absolutely. It was a winner on paper, and we were this close to buying a nail salon. And I was talking with one of my friends, and he actually owns a nail salon, and he said, "Well, I've got two questions for you that are probably kind of important. Number one, do you speak Vietnamese? And number two, do you know how to do nails?" And I said, no. He's like, well, listen, there's some things that go along with that type of business. And if you don't have those, it's probably not the right thing. And so I took that advice and I said, well, so I need to find a business that is in my wheelhouse where if I needed to step out of my job and go do this, I could do it. And lo and behold, we're looking around for stuff and Accent Financial Services was up for sale.
Oh, so
And
you
yeah,
weren't working. I just assumed, you never said this, but I just assumed that you were working there and the old man passed away and you said, hey, I'll buy it. So, no, you
yeah,
came to this. I mean, you had a background in accounting, as a kid helping your dad. So you
yeah.
had a general knowledge of it. But I'm guessing at that point, through your hospitality financing stuff, did you already have your credentials and all that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I've been uh, my most of my tenure through hospitality has been in the financial divisions.
What did the accounting side of hospitality teach you or prepare you? How did it prepare you, if it did, positively or negatively, for the role you're in now?
Yeah. So hospitality is when I look at the people in hospitality, they tend to be very high functioning, conscientious type people who are there to be of service.
Hmm.
And that's the type of person that winds up in hospitality. And that by itself, I think is a huge differentiator for somebody in the tax and accounting world because I can say this because I'm one of them. Uh, a lot of tax and accounting people are not particularly people.
Right.
And so the most interesting thing that I took away from hospitality is not so much on the accounting side, but how to be a people person and how to bring some personality into dealing with clients. And obviously, I've worked for small hotels, enormous hotels, all kinds of things throughout the years. And the idea of doing the accounting stuff and having schedules for things and being able to time travel sometimes when you're working on the books and you're like, okay, we got to go fix 2 months
Yeah.
ago in order to do
Yeah.
this thing and this thing, and that's all fascinating. But that kind of stuff is all the traditional things that I think people learn as you go through a career. For me, being able to see the same setup that I was at a whole bunch of different hotels, and I also got sent to go do task forcing at other hotels. And being able to see all of the different ways that people made their accounting departments work was fascinating. Seeing how operations work and the position that the accounting department held inside operations, fascinating. And just having the understanding that there's a zillion ways that you can do something and everybody is doing it a little bit differently for whatever works for that situation, but everybody is doing it with the same spirit in mind. And in hospitality, that spirit is how do we be of service?
I can tell you're more of a people person than most accountants because you use the number zillions. Zillions. That's a very street number, right? And so you're one of the people. It sounds like what you have the ability to do. I don't know if you're doing it, but what you have the ability to do is apply a Four Seasons level of customer service to an accounting firm, which is a little bit more stereotypically anyway, a little bit more transactional. Just the numbers, ma'am.
Yeah.
Joe Friday, black, Dragnet,
Yeah.
very like to the point, a little bit dry, bearer of bad news, not a lot of delivery, not a lot of bedside manner, but that's kind of goes along with the territory. It sounds like you're able, with your background in hospitality and just the awareness when you said that most people in hospitality have some kind of desire to serve. And, that not at all the hotels I've stayed at, by the way, but over the years, but but when you get it, you totally appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then you compare everything else against it. You've talked a lot about owning. You've talked in the past when I was doing my research on you. You've talked about lots of different things, including owning a forklift, which I can't imagine you're using in your financial practice. Traveling through China, Canada, Ireland, and collecting some quirky lessons. I like that, quirky lessons along the way. What's an example of a story from that part of your life that taught you something important about how business works or people and all of that? What have you carried with you?
Yeah. Well, so the owning a forklift story is interesting. So I wouldn't say that was my first foray into entrepreneurship, but it was the first serious one. And my dad and I had a manufacturing company. And if you and this was years ago, obviously, but we were making printer ribbons. And so we had kind of acquired this business, and my dad's like, "Hey, you wanna come do this?" I'm like, "That sounds kinda cool. Yeah, let's have our own business." And in my mind, I was in the accounting department at a hotel at that point. I'm like, "Okay, I'll do all of the accounting, and I'm gonna do it, very hotel structured and, big company like." And that turned very quickly from being I'm gonna do accounting to I have to do accounting and I have to be the IT guy for the business and I had to set up all the offices and I had to set up the warehouses and I had to drive the forklift and I very quickly took a lot of lessons away from that in entrepreneurship of you don't get to have one job. You have a lot of jobs, and maybe today that's the janitor and the warehouse guy, and maybe tomorrow it's the financial guy, and after that it's HR, and you have to wear a zillion hats. Zillion again, sorry.
There you go. No, I'm not. That's not a foul. I like that. That proves you're human. It's funny because in small businesses, mine in particular, when it was just getting off the ground, by the time we were able to get a bookkeeper, that bookkeeper is also HR. They also do make sure the refrigerator is stocked and there's always coffee available and filters and cups and all that stuff. They are very admin oriented, and they do the books, right? But
Yeah,
it seems to be a catch-all position, and I think that's representative of how little focus new businesses have toward accounting. We think that accounting is write the payroll checks, deduct the taxes, make tax payments, pay the bills, send the invoices, and that's it. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's true with a lot of very small businesses, someone who just knows how to run QuickBooks or something. But there's so much more. There's so much more. There's this whole balance sheet thing, which I never understood for years. I didn't. To me, balance sheet was a giant buzzkill. I'd look at the income statement and go, "Hey, look at the gross. Man, we're doing great." And then, we used at the time like a contract. I wouldn't even say CFO, but accountant. And they'd have a meeting with me every quarter, and they'd show me the balance sheet, and it had a whole different story. And I'm like, I don't want to see the balance sheet. That's just balance sheet BS. Okay, I get it. It's the BS sheet, and it
yeah,
was filled with inconvenient truths because it had a very long memory. Where the income statement looked at periods, whether you're looking at a month or a year to date or a fiscal year, the balance sheet had no ability to forget stuff. It carried over all the sins of the past and kept a running tally
yeah,
of how you're doing. And you might have the best year ever, and the balance sheet might just show a little less loss cumulatively, than before. So, yeah, I wanted the balance sheet to have a very short memory. Like, let's just start over. And the balance sheets never start over. They're cumulative. You work with entrepreneurs every day. Uh, you're also now an entrepreneur. What part of running your own business was harder than you expected?
oh man. I 100% sales. I have never been a sale my dad was a salesperson,
Hmm.
and he was great. And he could talk to anybody about anything, and it was amazing to watch him do it. I've always had the perspective that I couldn't sell a coat to an Eskimo.
Yeah.
Sales is not my thing. And having to learn how to do that has taken at least a year of my life deep diving into that world of understanding all of the moving parts of what it means to have a sales organization and what it means to, you get a client and you're like, great, we're going to go do this work for you. But it's not just that. We have to do it in a organized way to bring people on board. We have to have upkeep for relationships. Like you have to have all these different pieces that, in my mind, coming from a big company, that's a different department. I don't have to think about sales stuff. And so coming into owning my own business, I'm like, hey, we'll just, put some posts up on social media and, that'll be fine. No, there was so much more to it.
Well, you know what you had going for you? You had a blank slate because some of the best salespeople I've ever hired would be offended if I called them a salesperson. They had a disdain for salespeople. I remember once the first salesperson we ever hired was a copy machine repair person, and we bought a used copier from the local dealer because we couldn't afford a new one. And it was supposed to be all refurbished, and it was expensive. And I bought it, and they came to do the install, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. So the salesman, freaking out, like, oh, they're going to lose an order, makes a frantic phone call. 20 minutes later, this young guy shows up named Joe. And I'm a little pissed off, right? And Joe looked at me and he goes, you know what? I get it. I personally rebuilt this machine. Something happened in shipping. I'm not going to leave here until this machine is running and you feel good about it. I'm like, wow. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
do it. Make it so. And he did. And then he had to stay a little bit late and his boss had already left. So he starts looking around and he goes, you guys hiring? And I said, well, yeah, maybe. He goes, I'm a great service guy. I'd love to work in your service department. I said, we got that covered. How about sales? And then he looked at me and he goes, what? He goes, no. I'm not interested in sales. I said, how come? What's the reason? He says, salespeople are sleazy. I don't want to be one of those. Because he worked in the copy machine business and like used cars,
Yeah.
copiers, office supply. I mean, they have a reputation. It may or may not be deserved, but they do have a reputation. And that made me want to hire him more. And I convinced him to take a job in sales because he didn't like what people viewed salespeople as. And he was not going to do it that way. But his ability to calm me down, to back me up off the ledge, and to make me feel good about what happened, that's sales, right? So
Yeah.
I think I think the fact that you didn't have any experience in it and probably didn't want to and were intimidated by it, it's probably a good thing because you were able to rebuild Ryan's version of what sales should look like, not what every other accounting agency
Yeah.
has built. Because that's probably what you would have done. You would have just said, "Wow, what are the big, you know, what do the big five or three? I don't know how many they're down to now, but the big three accounting firms. How do they do it? And or you look at the person down the road, and then you're just another also ran. Every business owner has moments where they think, "Oh my God, what did I get into?" Right? We all have that second guessing. What was one of those moments for you, and how'd you just get through that? How do you power through that?
My second week owning the company. Uh, the company grew up on a farm out in Wiley. And so the first, they were selling all of their stuff and the business along with it. And they said, okay, but you can't stay here. You gotta go find your own spot. But until we did that, we were out on the farm. And I had my regular job, but I had taken off a couple of weeks so that I can come help do stuff. And and it was this one morning I was dealing with some other like regular life stuff, and I got a phone call from somebody there, and they said, "Hey, there's two IRS agents here with guns,
Yikes.
and they need to talk to somebody about what's going on with a particular situation." And that was like, wait a second.
What the hell did I get
Like
myself
that
into? Yeah.
that was that was not on the bingo card anywhere, is dealing with armed IRS agents. And that was pretty wild. And the fact that and we haven't had one since. It was a real specific situation. Um, but that it was crazy because first of all, acknowledging the fact that when these things get serious, they get really, really serious.
Yeah.
And then it caused a whole situation with insurance.
Mm.
And so we had to go, we were using tail coverage because it was a event that happened before us. We were using part of our stuff just to make sure that everybody was coordinating stuff. And that was wild to go through that experience as a first-time business owner and really dealing with taxes and stepping into this world to have like the most serious thing that you could imagine just happen right out of the blue. Yeah, that threw me off for sure.
When you took over the business, did the existing staff test you a little bit? Did they take advantage of you? Did they compare you? Like, that's not the way we've always done it, Ryan.
Oh,
I mean, did
man,
you have to go through some of that?
a lot of that, yes. Um, and so what was interesting is I'm a fairly techie guy, and I'm looking at how do you take a business that it's out on a farm, everything about it is paper.
Mm.
They shared one phone number and one email address between the 7 people that were working there. And an operation like that, just like I looked at it when I was buying the company and I said, "Great, here's all of the things that I could improve
Hmm.
to make everything, you know, take it up to the next level." No internet presence, no social media stuff, no
Wow.
advertising, like nothing. So that was part of the equation when I was looking at buying the thing, is here's all of the value adds that I can put in place. Well, all of the staff and all of the clients, turns out everybody really liked having things on paper. And the idea of like migrating everything that we're doing to software, having a secure portal for people's data, like doing all of the things that a modern firm would be doing. No, it was
The city slickers coming in and changing everything up.
yeah. That's that's how that's how I was feeling about the whole thing because it's just like the guy wants to just change all of the things. And man, there's some clients because that's been 4 years now. And there's still some clients that are like, "Can I just bring you my paper?" "Yeah, it's fine, man. Go ahead and bring it in."
Yeah.
But
Well, first thing you're going to
but
do is
yeah,
digitize it anyway, right? So that you
right.
could
Like,
work with
bring
it.
bring it in. I'll stick it in the scanner, and then here you go. You can have it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still host the Unfinished Empires podcast? Is that
So
something you're
we're
still
we're
involved with?
working on. So we're trying to get it started. We're working on building up the episodes right now before we do like a
Yeah.
formal launch and all of that kind of
Have
stuff.
some in the
So
bank. Yeah. Have some ready to
yeah,
go and schedule them out. I love the phrase unfinished empires because it suggests that entrepreneurs are always building, learning, correcting, and adapting. Like it's never done, right?
yeah.
What does unfinished empire mean to you?
Well, so the reason I came up with it is I started thinking about what is it that I'm trying to make and how does that relate to people who are we have some clients who are just serial entrepreneurs. We had a guy come in a while back. He has 18 different businesses, and and you think about the different ways that we all think about the world that we interact with. And so here's this guy, and his way of interacting with the world is to build things. And he sees a shiny object over here and he sees a blank space over here. He's like, I can fill that. I have the resources to do this and I can make this thing. And my personal experience with it is I I am also a builder. I love to build things. Like right now, I am building so much stuff in AI to take us to a completely different level that I don't think anybody has really seen yet. But I love to build stuff. And maybe that means, we started off largely as a tax preparation company. And the idea of doing tax strategy, that wasn't really a thing. It is now because as I'm listening to all of our clients, they have a lot of needs that they would really like somebody to answer some of their questions in a different way that doesn't have to do with preparing my taxes. And so we started building that. It's so and that's where the tax myths came from, right? The even unfinished empires, the reason why it came about in the first place is because there's people who want to know that they're not alone. And when I sit down and I have conversations with entrepreneurial minded folks, we have amazing conversations. And I'm like, I wish other people could participate in this and hear this, right? And other things too, right? So I have another company called Dayspring Hospitality, and the whole point of that one is to help hotels find task force resources to go out and help out while they're short staffed.
Hmm.
There was an opportunity for that, and I happen to know some people here who know some people over here, and I could make some connections, and I could fill a gap. And so building all of these things, it's so much fun, and I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit of an addict when it comes to the world of building businesses, but it's also so much fun. And I figure if I could unlock some of the fun that other people are having doing it, it's so cool.
Yeah, I agree. I consider myself a creator, right? And not a typical sense. I'm not making movies. I'm not performing. I'm not a musician. I'm not an artist. But I created all the products that we sell today. These are sophisticated technology machines that are part of the electronics ecosystem. And, I create podcasts. I create content. I love that too. I consider myself a builder or a creator of things. What I don't love are the details for everything. You mentioned the phrase "shiny object in the corner." Entrepreneurs are, we talk in human behavioral terms and psychological things. We talk about the spectrum. There are people who are on the spectrum. I believe part of the spectrum is reserved for entrepreneurs. We have our own permanent stake in the spectrum somewhere. The psychological manuals, the DSM, I'm sure at some point, maybe the next issue, we'll have an entire chapter on entrepreneurs because we definitely are wired differently. And part of that is we love to create.
Yeah.
We get bored with like the details. And a lot of those details fall into accounting, right? And
Yeah.
so as a result, a lot of business founders, entrepreneur type people will only look at their financials when they absolutely have to. Maybe that's tax time. Maybe it's when they need a loan. Maybe when they run out of money, something goes wrong.
Yeah.
How do you convince your clients to look at their finances more regularly? In a very obvious statement, which is always overlooked, it's amazing what you see when you look, right?
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
look. A, because maybe we're fearful, and B, because it's boring. It's not as fun as creating the new product or creating whatever, creating the new AI agent, whatever the case may be. So how do you instill that level of, I don't know, excitement, awe, or necessity into your clients?
Yeah. So I feel that too, because, and maybe more so than some people, the last thing that I want to do at the end of the day is go home and do my bookkeeping.
Right.
And so I relate to people on that exact level. I'm like, I get it. You didn't start your business because you want to go do this stuff. But, to me, once you start unlocking pieces that people do have an interest in, you you can weave them into a little web to catch people's attention.
Hmm.
And so for some people, and the tax smithing thing has gotten people's attention. It's part of why I really enjoy doing that piece, where somebody will reach out and they're like, "Oh, well, I have this tax question." I'm like, "Okay, well, you've got this tax question, but what about all of these other things? Have you ever thought about any of this?" And you throw out a little piece where you're like, "Well, you could probably save $5,000 by doing this, or you could maybe save $20,000 by doing this."
Now
And
they're
all of a
excited.
sudden, yeah, so now they're listening, and you say, "Great. So I want to take the idea of building, like looking at all the stuff that you're building, and let me help you build it." So what I do is I take all of that and I dissect their whole life, and then we diagram it out and we start building different pieces. Like, okay, well, so you said your goal is you want to retire at 55. Great. You're going to need some retirement accounts. You have a business. You can do this thing. You could do this thing. You could do this thing. That'll help on the way to that goal. Like, okay, yeah, that's cool, because we're gonna make this whole thing, and they participate in the building of the whole program. And I find that to be a great way to really get people's attention. Now, getting them to look at a P&L, it's a little more challenging sometimes. Like, we send P&Ls out to everybody every month. And I think there's like 8 people that actually open our email, and there's maybe, 3 that actually read it. And but getting people to get interested in that stuff, that really happens when they have a need for something else. So they have a question, we say, "Great, here's how you look at all of this stuff. I'm gonna answer your question by showing you all of these other things. And then I'm gonna talk in business owner language. If you wanna build to this, you need to do this thing and this thing and this thing, and here's why this is kinda going off the rails." Or, here's what's working right, here's what's working wrong, and here's how you're going to try to get to that particular goal.
Yeah.
And most of the time, getting people to open their eyes is it involves them having a specific need.
There's a big difference, go figure, between tax preparation and tax strategy. That came to
Yeah.
me one day several years ago. How would you explain that difference to a business owner who only thinks, you look at taxes once a year? April 14th, I better look at my
Yeah.
taxes.
Yeah. The whole thing to me is, do you want to be reactive or do you want to be proactive? And being reactive, you get your tax bill and you pay your money. Being proactive, you say, "I don't want to have a tax bill. I want to do something different." And do you want to be this way of thinking, or do you want to be this way of thinking? And that's the whole score to me, is reactive versus proactive.
Yeah. I certainly have been the benefactor of tax strategy. We're a high tech company. We invest a lot of money legitimately into research and development, R&D.
Yeah.
And then, so we took great advantage of the R&D tax credit. And then it sunsetted. It went to a 5-year amortization that ruined all our plans. But this year was the first full year we could take
Yeah. Now
advantage
it's
of
back.
it. Big, beautiful
Yeah.
bill thing. And fortunately, we knew that it was just a matter of time because it had bipartisan support. Only, the way Congress works is they throw a bunch of other stuff on there that no one else likes. So, nothing gets through. But we knew eventually it would come back. So we kept the strategy. This was the first year in 34 years that we had a zero tax bill. Zero.
Yeah.
Only because we were able to use the accumulated credits. And next year we'll probably have zero as well because we had enough to go by. We
Yeah.
just kept the strategy working because eventually we would have, reaped the benefit of that. It would have been spread over years, but that was like a real wake up call for me. And I've always listened to our CFO about tax strategy, and we're like, yeah, it sounds good. Kumbaya, yeah, pass the marshmallows, play the guitar, and I would follow it, but I wasn't really like super stoked by it because it would save us 5,000 here, 10,000 there, which is not small change, but it's not enough to just change your life. Note when we pay six figures in taxes every year, and then for the next 2 years
Yeah.
they're at zero through a legitimate, defendable, government-approved program to, hey, in exchange for doing all this research and development, which makes the country stronger and the industry stronger, we'll give you a tax credit, not even a deduction. Amazing. So that was like, okay, I am totally into tax strategy now. Now I call them and I'm like, what's next? What else can we do?
Yeah.
Right?
What else can we
But
do?
what else can we do? Cash flow. They say in real estate, the three most important things in real estate are location, location, location. Well, I think in business, particularly small growing businesses, way more important than profit, at least in a moment, is cash flow. Lots of companies go bankrupt profitably. They just run out of cash, right?
Yep.
If all the bills came due one day and all the invoices, came in one day, for payment, they would be profitable. But it doesn't work that way. You're investing in the future. Growth, turns out, is like really expensive. And every young business thinks that the solution to every problem is we just need to be bigger. We just need to grow more. And they're undercapitalized. So cash flow is one of those things that everyone knows is important, but many business owners still get surprised by it. What are the most common cash flow mistakes you see entrepreneurs make?
Well, right from the beginning, I would almost disagree with you that everybody knows that cash flow is important. Um, I think there's
Let
tons
me
of people that
rephrase that
don't.
statement. You're absolutely correct. Everybody knows who's run out of money. That cash flow,
Yeah.
it turned out, was important, right? We may not,
Yeah.
if we're getting by, we probably don't realize it. It's when
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're growing, lots of customers are coming, everyone wants to place an order, they want to double, triple the amount of orders, and you realize you can't even take an order. That's
Yeah.
when it becomes important. Good call. That was a good catch. Yes.
Yeah, it is interesting, um, because there's so many small businesses that their score at the end of the day, it doesn't have anything to do with their reports. It doesn't have anything to do with a P&L or balance sheet. It doesn't have anything to do with cash flow. It just has to do with the balance in their bank account. And what I see, and way more often than I would like to see, is people who start making decisions just because of the balance in their bank account and not because of their actual goals or the actual business or how they're running operationally. They just say, okay, well, we're getting low, so we're just not going to do all of these things. Like, well, what does that mean? Like, when are you gonna not be low? Like, what's your seasonality look like, or what is it that's causing that? And if you knew that that was going to happen, which you probably should, like, why didn't you do something different instead of just watching your bank balance go like this,
Yeah.
right? And but really trying to educate business owners on looking at more than their bank account is it's a difficult exercise.
Yeah. Yeah, the bank account might look good today artificially because in our business we build on contracts and we get down payments and things like that. But I remember the first time our CPA said, you got to book all these deposits as a liability. I'm like, what? Like, so yes, the bank account was large, but our liabilities went up at the same time, which
Yeah.
doesn't show up in the same section I'm looking at, right? So, it's just like if you want, I used to take this bizarre solace when our AR was very high. I'm like, man, look at the AR. This is amazing. We've never had an AR this big. Well, it was that big because everyone was late. Our agings were out of control. But for some reason, I mean, I knew that intellectually, but for some reason, I'd like looking at, a million two in AR. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. We've never had a million two in AR. Yeah, but, you know, it's 180 days, If we were renewing our line of credit, the bank would look at that and discount that, right? They would go, no,
Yeah.
we're not even going to count that. They don't look at concentrations. They don't look at agings over a certain number because they're smart, right? But it's amazing when we're desperate to build a business and have it survive, how we rationalize things that any professional would look at and go, "Oh my God, this isn't very good."
Yeah.
The patient's on hospice right now, and we're like, "No, things are great. You don't understand. Things are great. We've got a ton of potential orders coming in." Well, okay, pay your mortgage with the promises that you're going to get an order. See if they cash that check. At what point does a business owner need to move beyond basic bookkeeping? Everyone starts with basic bookkeeping. First, we do it ourselves because we're doing everything. When we start a business, it's more like a side hustle than a business. And then it becomes a business, and then we start hiring employees, and then maybe we get a basic bookkeeper who's also the HR person and the coffee person, as we talked about. At what point should we as entrepreneurs start thinking more strategically, maybe with forecasting, maybe fractional CFO support, or some kind of deeper financial plan?
Yeah. That's a good question. And, I think the way that it frequently comes up for us, um, or maybe I'll just tell you kind of the way it comes up for me. When when I finally got a handle on here's all of the transactions that are happening, and I started thinking about, well, I could really use somebody to bounce some of these ideas off of. And particularly somebody who can see something from a slightly different perspective than what I have and help me to answer some of these questions. And so like I mentioned, my weak spot was sales. And I got to a certain point and I said, "You know what? I have to find somebody that really understands this stuff because I have questions." And maybe I can figure out how to do all of it myself, and maybe I can do all of that research because I've made it this far in the business and I'm a bright guy. I can learn a lot of stuff. I can probably handle it. And then I started looking at the time that it takes to do things on my own. And that's when I started to decide I needed to bring in some experts. And so sales was one of them. I mean, I haven't felt like I needed an accounting expert uh,
I would worry
yet.
if you did. Yes.
um, but yeah, I think when you get to the point that you just acknowledge that there's this thing over here, and maybe you could tackle it, and maybe you could learn everything that it takes to understand that side of the business, but you just don't have the time or the expertise to be able to handle it right now. And so for me, I think that would be my advice to entrepreneurs is understand where your weak points are and find somebody to help. It doesn't have to be like you don't have to go hire a $250,000 a year CFO. Go get somebody who does fractional CFO and pay him a couple of grand and go through all of your stuff.
Yeah.
Those things are out there. It doesn't have to be I have to hire somebody on and spend tons and tons of money on it. Just find somebody who specializes in the thing that you're thinking about that you feel like they can answer your questions.
Yeah, we have a good relationship with our CPA firm, and they obviously do tax preparation and all that. But most of our strategy comes from our relationship with our CFO. It's a contract CFO. We've known him for years. And because we can have out of the box hypothetical discussions more freely than when we're sitting down with our CPAs. Because we'll float some idea, crazy idea. Maybe it's not a kosher idea. Maybe it's just like, well, no, those two IRS armed agents are going to show up at your door if you try and do this. Okay. Well, we don't want to have those types of conversations with our CPA firm. And they probably don't want to hear those types of conversations. And we're not conspiring to do anything illegal, but a lot of times, not so much me anymore because I'm semi-retired now. I still own it, but they pay me to stay away. But I remember having, well, what about this? Like, no, you can't do
Yeah.
that. You'll be shut down tomorrow. Or, interesting. Let me look into that. So, I think it's important to have almost like a therapy session with your CFO where you can come up with crazy ideas and they can confirm or deny them. That's what you pay them for. But I think when you're deep in the financial world, you think GAAP all the time, right? You're bound by the rules of GAAP, which is good. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but some CPA firms are you got to be right in the middle of the lane. They don't have a lot of tolerance for being within GAAP, but close to the edges. And again, I'm not suggesting for a second that anyone break the law because it will come back to bite you. It just always does. But there are a lot of programs out there that even seasoned CPAs aren't aware of.
Yeah.
And I've introduced a couple to our CPAs. The whole R&D tax credit thing, when we first started doing that, we've been doing it for years, was new to them. And I introduced it to them, and they're like, yeah, we heard about that, but we really don't have any clients that use that. Let us do some research for you. But so it's good. Ignorance is bliss. Sometimes it allows us to come up with ideas that maybe your CPA hasn't come up with. But I think that's where a CFO that has a broader view of
Yeah.
your business and a bunch of other businesses that they can say, hey, I have another client, who did X, Y, Z, and that they're kind of like you guys. So I think it's really good to have those types of conversations, and I'm not saying like isolate them from the people who are going to finally prepare the books, but if you're going to have imaginative conversations, do it with a friendly voice and someone who
Yeah.
can say, "No, I'm not going to present that to your CPAs because they're going to shoot it down." So, okay,
Yep.
fair enough.
That's that's the same thing for us. I don't prepare taxes. I don't want to put the numbers in the box. I want to sit down and think about stuff with people and be like, "Well, what if you do this thing?"
Yeah,
And man, there are some crazy ideas out there, but every once in a while, somebody will come across something and be like, "Well, what if I did this thing, and then we did this
right.
thing?" And I'm like, that, yeah, that could actually work. Like,
Yeah,
let's let's
explore it
noodle
deeper.
through
Yeah,
it, and yeah.
exactly, exactly. Last question because we're about out of time. So, going back to your early days in hospitality, how did you define success back then, and how do you define success now?
Wow, that's interesting. Well, man, success back then, I I was 20 and I came into a thing that I didn't know anything about in the industry. I didn't know anything about in a discipline that I didn't know anything about. And success for me back then was it was really just somebody being like, "Oh yeah, you put that together really well. Like that's awesome. We haven't seen somebody
So,
do that before."
positive feedback, some recognition.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and well, it was funny because you were talking about or you were talking about balance sheets earlier, and my first experience with a balance sheet was my controller at the time. He came up to me with, you remember those like 5-inch D-ring binders?
Yes.
He walked up to me with two of those and he goes, "This is the account reconciliations. Go ahead and figure that out." And no idea what I was looking at or what to do, but it had the history of everything that had happened in that balance sheet. And so I sat there and I figured it out and I finally got the hang of it. And he's like, "Dude, that was great. I love that you were able to understand exactly what it is that we're trying to prove, because it's more like a mathematical proof
Yeah.
than it is, here do accounting." And so I look back on those times and I think, yeah, the idea of just people being like, "Hey, you did a good job," man, that was enough for me,
Yeah, you're
and it was
20.
great.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, man, success for me is just when I have stuff that comes together in the right way for people, or I have somebody walk out of here with their mind blown about all of the things that they can do, and how they're going to change their life by putting this in place and putting this in place, and then being able to take that and have the rest of my family involved in some of this stuff. Like, I have my kids are here right now. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they hang out in the business, and they'll talk to clients that come in, and it's such a different way of looking at the world now that I say, it's a successful day is one where I walk away and everybody is better off for the work that we did in that day, and I've built just a little bit more something for my family.
Nice. I like that. Is it Ascent or Accent Financial Services? I just want to make sure
Accent.
that's what I thought. Okay, I
Yeah.
think that's what I said in the intro, and then I just started questioning myself. So, if my audience would like to get more information on Ryan's company, Accent Financial Services, if you're watching this on YouTube, right down here, right down there below me, it says "See More." Click that, and the URL for Accent Financial Services will be there. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, go to that podcast app, look at the show notes, and that information will be there as well. Ryan, thank you for the generosity of your time and spending all this time with me and my audience and sharing your entrepreneurial journey. And more importantly, sharing some pretty savvy financial advice to me and my audience. I think it's a complete understatement to say we entrepreneurs need to hear that. And the sooner we hear it, the shallower the hole will be that we have to crawl out of. So, one way or another, we're either going to go out of business or we're going to crawl out of that hole. And it would be great just to not dig the hole in the first place. So,
Yeah, for
I
sure.
would encourage, whether it's with Ryan's company or someone else, I would encourage people who are building a business right now. If you're like me, and like a lot of business owners that just don't have time or desire to really dig into the financials, again, like I said earlier, it's amazing what you can see when you look. And at some point, someone's going to look, and at some point, that could be a bank
And
or a tax collector, or all customers, people you don't want looking. So look soon, and really get a handle on that. It's not it's not super exciting. It can be boring. It could be a buzzkill, but it can save your business. And you're going to end up there anyway. Might as well make it sooner. Anyway, that's my advice based on
yeah,
all the mistakes I made around accounting. You don't have to make the mistakes I made, although if you're like most entrepreneurs, you probably will. But that's okay because there's people like Ryan out there that can pull you out of that hole. So Ryan, again, thanks. Continued success to you. I hope you continue to do well, and I hope our paths cross again.
likewise, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
I loved
And
it.
yeah, anybody who needs some help with this stuff, I am more than happy to at least try to steer you in the right direction.
Who would have thought we could have had an interesting conversation with an accountant? Who said that was not possible? Certainly.
Everybody says that's not possible.
Everyone, but this is proof that that's not always accurate. Well, thanks again, Ryan.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, here are some final thoughts. Ryan's story is a good reminder that the numbers are never just numbers. They tell us whether the business is healthy. They tell us whether growth is real or just expensive. They tell us whether we're building something sustainable or just staying busy. And sometimes, if you're willing to look closely enough, they tell us the truth we've been avoiding. For entrepreneurs, that truth can be uncomfortable. Most of us didn't start businesses because we were excited about tax strategy, cash flow, forecasting, bookkeeping systems, or financial reports. We started because we had an idea, a skill, a product, a service, or a problem we wanted to solve. But at some point, every entrepreneur has to face the business behind the business. Ryan's message is that financial clarity isn't just about compliance. It's not just about filing the return or keeping the books clean. It's about giving entrepreneurs the confidence to make better decisions, plan ahead, protect what they're building, and understand whether the business is actually serving the life they want. And maybe that's one of the most important lessons of all. You don't have to love the numbers, but you do have to listen to them. Now, that is a wrap. Thanks for being part of our Reluctant Entrepreneur family. We've been very busy recording future episodes with amazing guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, we'd really love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com, where you can apply or recommend a guest or just learn more about the show. And a couple of shameless plugs. I've started a new series under the Reluctant Entrepreneur brand. The new series is called Reluctant Lessons When Businesses Go Wrong. On this series, we dig into high-profile business failures and the story behind it all. So far, we've profiled numerous companies, including Rubbermaid, Kodak, Blockbuster, BlackBerry, Toys R Us, DeLorean Motor Company, and many more, with even more to come. There's no shortage. Check them out on this channel. And if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon, and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. And to everyone listening or watching, if you find yourself stepping into entrepreneurship, whether by choice or by circumstance, remember this: sometimes the path we never planned becomes the journey we were meant to take. Thanks again so much for being here. I truly appreciate all of you, and I'll see you again soon.